what are you thinking about with AI?
Well, after I listened to the podcast, I did have like questions, like the basic stuff, because she sort of discussed the point from like her involvement of like what she does on her end, but like what do you need to do on your end to be prepared? Where do you get semen? Um, and then of course the other thing was the nitrogen tank. Like, I mean, can you like find people to store your semen for you? I basically like, how
Oh
does it work on your end as far as getting prepared to do AI?
yeah. Oh, lots of good questions. So, um, there are people who and I don't goat shop as much as I used to. I actually, in the fall, when my University of Massachusetts students, they have to goat shop. And so I wind up checking all their links. And you do see like people who have websites for their herd. Um, you will see sections sometimes that talk about goat semen. I remember one time the tab on there said on ice. And I was like, what's that? And I clicked on it and it was all the goat semen that they had for sale. Um, and so really, I mean, just lots more people do it than you think. Because I mean, there are some people who just like, they have a buck that they personally love and they know he's only going to live to be a certain age. And then and that's sad. Like, I mean, looking back, I'm like, wow, I wish I would have had some of Pegasus's semen so that I could have kept using him. Like, I didn't expect when he was 8 years old, he was sterile. Um, and I left him in there with does for like 2 or 3 months, and they kept coming back into heat. And I finally was like, no. Um, so you can look on websites and see if people, because some people sell it directly. And I'm sure everybody may have a little different way of doing it. Like I know one person that I looked at getting semen from a long time ago, they had a shipping tank. And so they would ship the semen to you in a tank and then you had to ship it back to them. And I think you gave them a deposit or something to make sure that you shipped it back to them because they're expensive. They don't want you to say, hey, I'll just keep this. So, and then the other thing too is that some of the companies that do buck collection also sell semen. And so there are catalogs online. And this was one of the things I wanted to look at before I even did this episode, because a lady had contacted me with a question a couple months ago. And she's like, I can't believe how expensive buck semen is. I might as well just buy a goat. And I was like, really? Like, and so before I even did that episode, like I wanted to check that out. And so I went to the website of one of the collection companies to check, and you can still get semen inexpensive. Like it's still like $50 to $100 a straw for most of them. And like she said, you can split a straw. So you don't, and it's funny because afterwards, because during that, she said that another vet told her that he had a client one time that wanted him to split a straw 5 ways.
Yeah.
I cannot do that. It was with white-tailed deer, and a straw was $25,000.
Oh my gosh.
And I
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
not worth taking the risk of splitting it 5 ways and not having anybody get pregnant.
I know. I was like, holy cow, I had no idea. Like, I had no idea. She's like, oh yeah, the white-tailed deer industry is just insane. Like, I mean, that just blows the alpaca people out of the water, in terms of pricing and stuff. So anyway, there was like the company, the site I was on, there was one buck that it was $500 a straw, $1. That was it. And that was a meat goat, which that's what I've kind of heard. I mean, and that's what I've heard. That's the lady that was complaining was saying was a meat goat breeder. And so maybe I'm guessing she was looking on a website of of a meat goat breeder who was selling their own semen and probably had extremely high priced goats.
So something that she said that I thought was really interesting was, and I'm just wondering, like, how do you research this? How do you find it out? I breed for parasite resistance on my property. I would want to ensure that the buck has parasite resistance, a good parasite resistance. And I was really intrigued by the fact that she mentioned that as one of the qualities that people will list for the assets of using that buck semen. So how do you find the ones that are parasite resistant? Is it like in the catalog? Does it say like all of the attributes that come with this specific goat semen?
I would think that's something that people would have on their website, because the catalog I looked at, it was just like the registered name of the buck and the price. And so, just like on a breeder's website, they would tell you that. I mean, like I include that on my website, like how many, like one of my bucks, Monarch, he is 7 years old now, and it says he's had a dewormer once in his life, and that was due to human error and moving the bucks back into a pasture too soon. Like the rotation got messed up. So I mean, he's very parasite resistant. If it's just you have to look at the breeder's website and see, like if they talk about, I got somebody messaging me on Instagram right now who's like, he's got skinny goats that are dying, and he's like, oh, but I drench them every 6 months. And I'm just like, that's your problem.
Mhm.
He's like, oh no, it can't be worms. I drench them every 6 months. So if you're on somebody's, I mean, because a lot of people mention that on their website, like what they do for herd health and stuff. And, if somebody says that they're deworming their goats twice a year, like, I don't want their kids. I don't want anything to do with those goats. Because you don't know what kind of genetics they have. It would just be a crapshoot.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely look for somebody that talks about having parasite resistant goats. With Nigerians, I honestly don't, like I said, I don't do a ton of buck shopping or goat shopping, mostly in the fall, when my students have to submit like, I want to buy this goat because, and then I'm clicking on the links and visiting the websites. And unfortunately, I don't see a lot of people mentioning that.
Yeah, I mean, normally, especially if you're buying proven animals, they're in the show world. And in the show world, they are breeding for beautiful animals. They are breeding for high dairy production, and a lot of times those things don't match up with parasite resistance. So it's, I guess it's kind of a crapshoot. I mean, my highest milk producer and most parasite resistant goat that I have on my property is a mutt.
Mhm.
I call her my ghetto goat, but it's just like in the dog world, the
Yeah.
mutts are the healthiest ones that you're going to find. It's the ones that have been bred to perfection that have every element under the sun. So, okay. So then the other thing is she talked about, that you can only use frozen sperm most successfully laparoscopically, that doing it just intracervical with frozen is not really recommended. It just needs to be cold. Cold. I'm assuming that it's just cold. Like, how do you get fresh sperm that hasn't been frozen if you want to start off with the simplest method?
I think you might be thinking of the splash method, which is the one that she said you have to use fresh semen for it.
And that's just basically what a buck does. It's just inserted into the vaginal cavity.
Yeah. With each, and then intracervical had a higher rate of success, and then laparoscopic had the highest rate of success. And people can learn to do it. Like you could learn to do the intracervical
That's what I'm hoping, that my
Yeah.
vet will come out here and teach me how to do it.
Yeah, because they have usually at the ADGA conferences, they have an AI clinic. I've seen that at a lot of them. I wouldn't say it's everyone, but I know I've seen it at a lot of them. They have AI clinics where they teach people how to do it.
And it sounded like on your end, like getting their hormones synchronized is really pretty easy. It's basically 2 injections given 12 days apart.
Yeah,
And that's kind of all there is to it.
yeah,
Because it would really be great to control, like getting all of my does pregnant, like within 4 or 5 days of each other. So I could really control the kidding. And it's not like, 2 in labor at the same time, or a set of kids every month. And then it drags on forever. Kidding season drags on.
yeah. Well, if you breed them all at the same time, there is a really good chance you're going to have them in labor at the same time.
Right. Yes. Because the
Um,
2 that were in labor for me last year, I bred on the same day, and they literally were in labor at the same time. It's crazy at how exact they can be. But it
yeah,
would really be nice to, synchronize them 7 days apart or 6
yeah,
days apart.
yeah. I mean, I know people who even do that if they're breeding with bucks. Years ago, the person I bought a La Mancha doe from, like, you look at their kidding schedule and they were all like within a week. And it's like, why would you do that to yourself? And they had like 20 or 30 does. I'm like, why would you do that to yourself? You're not going to sleep for a week.
Yeah.
But I mean, then
It's almost better than dragging it out with all the different schedules of when to separate at night and when they're leaving for their new home. And, it's last year was just horrible with all of that.
yeah,
So I guess technically you could synchronize and use your own buck
yes, yeah,
if you don't want to do AI. The problem that I run into is I made a bad chest move and did not think about it appropriately. And I sold the last buck that I had that was not connected to my youngest dolings,
um,
who are now ready to be bred this year, 2 of them, and I have no buck. I'm just like hitting myself in the head going, what were you thinking? What were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. And so now I don't, and I'm like, I don't want to I've worked so hard in getting parasites under control on my property. And I just really don't want to bring in, have to deal with quarantine and, all the tracking and everything, which it's a mess when you bring a new animal on. You have to worry about diseases coming in. There's just so many things that come
oh
with
yeah,
introducing a buck to your property.
yep,
So it would really be nice to maybe kind of try this out, but I don't want to be in $5,000 either.
right, yeah. You know what? I think one of the buck collection companies is in Texas. I would so like Google goat semen, and you'll get all kinds of stuff. And it would be cool if they were like close enough to you that you could pick it up.
They may have a bank at A&M. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't. Evelyn will know. I'll ask Dr. Mackay. I just wanted to kind of chat with you first to get kind of a little better understanding of like the producer side of the responsibilities in it before I called her and asked her about it.
Yeah. And then the other option for getting the does to come into heat is to use a cedar, which is an insert. So you put that in, and it's again, it's hormones. It's just they're being released a different way. It's like menopausal women having an estrogen patch versus taking a pill.
And that's pretty easy too. That you just it just like, I envision like a plunger, like plunge sticking it in there.
I would think that it's pretty easy. Like, again, I would think that, you see the vet do it once, you could do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe I'll just give her a call and see. That would be just kind of something fun to try if we can ever get a break in the heat, because crazily enough, my girls are cycling right now. They weren't cycling last year, but they're not coming into standing heat. They're, I can tell they're coming into heat because they're of the way they're interacting with each other and how their behavior changes. It's, you know how you get to know them, you know how their behavior changes, but they are not, it's not full, like they're not coming into standing heat. So, and it's got to be, 114-degree heat index that's doing it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm really thinking now, like, well, maybe I should do AI next time I need to bring in some new blood. So
I'm excited. I want to try to see how this would work for me, because it would be great to get some like really fabulous genetics, because I'm starting to do, my plan is to do herd sharing as well. So I would love to increase my milk production in the does that I do have, although I have one person that's like, I want to buy all your milk. So now I'm like, you know, so yeah, kind of crazy, but anyway, it would be nice because we need to increase our does, and it would be nice to increase does that have increased milk production, because it's fewer to have to feed and take care of if you can get more milk from an individual than, two that are producing the same thing.
yeah.
So I'm excited. If and when I have time, I'm going to try to get some more research into that and see what I can find out. And hopefully Dr. Mackay will be like, oh yeah, I do that. I'll come show you.
Yeah, exactly. That would be awesome. I mean, and you're close enough to A&M. If she doesn't, there's bound to be somebody there who does.
Well, they have a reproductive clinic there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they probably do.
Yeah. But it'd be nice to have her come to your farm and do it and show you how and everything.
Yes.